Welcome to Irish Illustrated Insider. I'm Tim O'Malley, joined today by John Bryce of Football Scoop, Tim Priester of Irish Illustrated, and all of you at Radio Free America on this beautiful first day of fall. Guys, I was going to begin this segment with a question asked of us regarding Marcus Freeman's Saturday press conference, wondering what we thought when he said the word panic 3 times. It seemed a lot more relevant then until Tim Priester asked Marcus Freeman the question of the day: would he consider taking over play calling? And there did not seem to be, Tim Priester, a whole lot of panic or references to panic anymore now that he has had time to digest and reassess the situation.
No, and the more I thought about it over the weekend or over Saturday night, Marcus Freeman's not the type to panic. And what he said today was vintage Marcus Freeman. It's like you're either gonna cash it in or you're gonna fight, and Marcus Freeman's going to fight, and he's going to fight it collectively. This notion of getting rid of Chris Ash, I get it. They're struggling. He's new. Golden was great. He's not doing a great job. I get all of that. But when you're in the position that these guys are, and you've got 7 days before your next game, panic is not going to help you. And so, he kept doing this collective thing, and that's who Marcus Freeman is, and that's what they've done. They pulled it together, and it's everybody being honest and everybody being accountable, and that includes players, assistant coaches, everybody as part of the organization. So, he said if I want a certain defense run, I'll say, Chris Ash, run this defense. He's the head coach, and that's how it works with them. So, I really, really appreciated the response. I didn't know what kind of answer I would get. I brought up Mike Elko as an example. And I know that we have a lot of people saying other coaches do it. Well, he's not other coaches. He's Marcus Freeman. Just because other coaches do it doesn't mean he's going to, that's what's best for him and his team and what he's going to do. So, just the notion of so they do it, Marcus Freeman isn't going to follow it that way. And it really comes down to this is a collective effort. And Notre Dame's best chance to pull out of the problems that they have defensively is to do it collectively. That's his attitude. And once I had a chance to sleep on it Saturday night and wrote my column on Sunday, that's kind of how I figured he would approach it.
JB?
Yeah, for me, you knew there would not be panic. There would be panic if they were 0-3 instead of 1-2. But I thought it was interesting that he also said we can't be talking about anymore that we're 4 points away from being undefeated or 4 points away from having a different outcome in those games, that it has to be how can we all get better. I do think there's a difference between panic and urgency, and I do think urgency to write this is appropriate and has to be at its max levels, and all the metrics for this defense through 3 games are putrid. It's a shell of what we had grown accustomed to for several seasons out of this team and out of this program, and I think probably what's amplifying frustrations is that this Chris Ash inherited, he may have not inherited as much experience, but he inherited more talent overall than what Al Golden had in 2022. And Al Golden opened that season with elite defensive work against an Ohio State team that's roster would just still finish putting first rounders into the NFL this past draft. What he did, I don't know that there will ever be enough appreciation for that one game for what Al Golden did in his debut at Notre Dame. And he was coming from the NFL, and he'd been in the NFL for a few years at that point. And he had been a head coach before that in the NFL. So that's it to me. It's urgency. So Marcus Freeman made clear, if I want something run, I can get on the headset and say, run this. But we didn't get to ask today, ran out of time. That happens. Not a big deal at all. Wanted to ask, we focus so much on player communication. I want to know how defensive staff communication is, because certainly the replay of the game on Saturday seemed to indicate there were definitely some huddles between the head man and the defensive staff. T.O.
Well, that's the thing. You can kind of agree that not pointing fingers, obviously everyone agrees not pointing fingers is the way to go. They're having personnel issues in coverage. They're having technique issues. Marcus Freeman admitted having technique issues in man-to-man coverage. So if you're coming together, you better be coming together as a coaching staff first. Those are the people that can't point fingers first, because whatever you do bleeds down to the team. You can easily get the team to rally, the guys that play. You can easily get guys to rally around the coaches if they can see they are together as a unit first. But that's a challenge this week, Priester, because Bryce, that's a very good point, John, that you could see they had issues. Might not have been a play calling issue, but you were mad at some play calls. You were mad at some play calls at some point during that first half, which is going to happen, but kind of goes back to what Tim wanted to ask about, and I did ask about, is what is going on that you need the halftime adjustment? The adjustments have to happen in the first and second quarter. Like, other than the Miami game where you don't know what the hell they're going to run. It can't always be we have no idea what they're going to run. We used to joke with Golden. Some team would always come out with something they never run before in the first series, and they would score they'd drive down the field, get a field goal, almost get a touchdown, and then later on it was zip. If that was happening, that wouldn't be the problem for Notre Dame right now. And I should point out, the halftime adjustments don't necessarily bleed into the late fourth quarter because everybody's scoring on Notre Dame in the late fourth quarter too.
Well, I didn't like when I'm going over the game, rewatching it, looking at my notes, and getting ready for tail of the tape. Like, I had to. Purdue scored 3 times, 13 points in the last 2 minutes of the first half. Now you don't necessarily readily realize it because you had the 2-hour break.
Yeah, it was weird
mixed in there. But there were 3 scores by Purdue in the last minute something. 2 of them were field goals. 1 was a touchdown. Now they'd already taken their halftime break, so they didn't go back in to the locker room. But can you imagine what Freeman would have been like going back into the locker room after what happened at the end of the actual first half? He would have been berserk about it. So, and I think Pete Sampson originally put the tweet out about the points that they're giving up, and I started wondering, well, wait a minute, what's the distribution of those points? And I had the number wrong at first, but 65 of the 98 points have come in the first half. That's 70%. Most of them in the second quarter. So they're making adjustments at halftime, but as you say, Tim, it's a little late at that point. Now you're chasing points. You were chasing Miami, and you were chasing Texas A&M at halftime.
Well, yeah, and the other issue would be I don't count Purdue's touchdown as much at the end. It exists if we're adding up points. Purdue scored 2, but A&M drove down for the winning score after adjustments had been made, and Miami drove down for the winning field goal after adjustments had been made. Yeah. So if it was a total shutdown after halftime, Notre Dame would be 3-0 or 2-1, and then we wouldn't be worrying about this. And Chris Ash would be a genius that just has to figure things out in the first half. But all of that is far from it. Guys, very quickly, since people like to hear about the depth chart, even though it's usually not touched, it was this week. Dallas Golden, who started at nickel, is now listed as the number 2 nickel behind Devonta Smith, which obviously Devonta Smith is healthy. That probably would have been the case last week. We touched on this a little bit in instant analysis, but the 2 of them together gives Notre Dame a shot at nickel. Carson Hobbs has been moved to corner, one of the corner spots, and Jadon Blair joined the 3 deep. It used to be Ethan Long having 2 spots in the 3 deep. So Jadon Blair joined the 3 deep, which means maybe he could be involved in special teams. Otherwise, you probably don't put him on there, is how I look at the 3 deep situations, if those guys could be activated from a scout team situation. But most important, Tim, Jared Dawson should be back this week, according to Freeman at least, after being banged up last week. And Elijah Hughes, man, I messed up. You didn't mess up a tail of the tape. I messed up in my post-game notebook, not including him as one of my game balls, because Elijah Hughes came in and gave them some good snaps.
Well, he was in the weeds. He was making plays in the weeds. You couldn't always see him until you rewatch it. That's what, I didn't realize how active he was. But no, he was impactful. He had 4 tackles. And again, you can't always judge everything based upon tackle totals. But I thought he was really effective. He's got a little bit of quickness in there. He's got a little bit of slipperiness in there. And he made an impact, and Lord knows they need it, because the bodies that they have there are a little bit inconsistent. How about Donovan Hinish? People wanted Donovan Hinish benched. He's played really well the last 2 games. You don't bench players. Sometimes you do, but not a captain that is working his butt off and is a guy that played effectively last year, in playoff situations too. And so good for him. He's done some good things. Elijah Hughes did a nice job in there.
He's a matchup guy. I still stand by that with Donovan Hinish. There's going to be bad matchups. There are going to be good matchups. I don't want to sell out Drew Mentalk, but he had the funniest line, but is also true, of the opening game. Donovan Hinish applied pressure to open the game against Ryan Brown, and as he said, that's 2 consecutive pressures for Donovan Hinish.
Back to back.
Snap
a little bit
1.
Of a break in between.
Don't tweet that out. Don't tweet out the open the old wounds. But yeah, so before we switch over to the offense very quickly, I want to say, guys, still listed as questionable. Leonard Moore. This is the most important injury update. A lot more than Jadon Blair joining the 3 deep. Sorry about that. Burying the lead. Noah Burnett still listed as questionable. Leonard Moore still listed as questionable. And Devonta Smith still listed as questionable. Hopefully will be some type of injury update Thursday, although honestly that they would still be questionable most cases there because you're not done practicing, right, JB? I mean, you're still not done practicing. We talked to Marcus Freeman on Thursday.
Yeah, and Thursday in recent years has been typically one of Notre Dame's more physical practices. It's been a day that's kind of set the tone for the weekend. I did want to add one quick thing to the halftime discussion or the near halftime discussion, the adjustments discussion, all of that, because we did, I think, do a nice job of chronicling last year that Notre Dame was not just really good in the middle eight, they were the best in college football, and they put together one of the most dominant seasons in that middle eight, the final 4 minutes before halftime, the opening 4 minutes out of halftime. It really spurred them. And I found my old tweet from through Notre Dame's first 14 games a year ago. They had a 145-10 advantage in the middle eight. Well, they've already given up 35 points this year in the middle eight in 3 games. So you can do the math, even somebody as math challenged as myself, and know that that's exponentially worse. Moreover, dating back to the national championship game, Notre Dame has now lost the middle eight 4 consecutive games. And that's just for what that team built that run on last year, that's completely anathema to their identity.
We got to touch on this now because that was actually question number 7 on our list. So let's try to figure out why that has happened. From Kay Beasley, how do we turn the middle eight from the strength into the most glaring weakness on this team? What is the reason is what is really being asked, not just how and why did this happen?
I apologize then. I hadn't had a chance to read down the question, so I ruined that, and that's completely on me. And
I'm already replacing it with a Christian Grey question, so we're good. I'll put it in there.
We're just sharing info, JB.
Yeah. But the real question is why, not that it's happened.
I mean, look, we've hit on it. Like whether they want to call it assignments or techniques or not playing with clarity and velocity, the unit not upholding its end of this thing is, by and large, Notre Dame's defense. Notre Dame's defense has been, as you noted, particularly vulnerable going into the half and going to the end of the game. And until that changes, then Notre Dame's going to continue to find itself in these either nail-biter games late or trying to figure out how in the hell Purdue scored 30 points.
You know, you think about the importance of that. You're playing a team, and, you know, I mean, Notre Dame's been a favorite most of the time, and you're playing a team, and, you know, right before halftime, you don't give them anything, and the team goes into the locker room, and the coaching staff, they're optimistic, like, hey, let's pull it back together, and let's start. Then you get off to a slow start against Notre Dame again. I mean, that, you can understand how demoralizing that is for a football team, but 35 points in the middle eight, good Lord. I mean, the season just started. Obviously, that's going to diminish, but man, that's an awful rate through one quarter of the regular season.
And the fact is that's a little deceptive because Miami scored on its opening possession of the third quarter
against 7 minutes.
It just took 7.5 minutes, but it dominated the middle eight there, or otherwise you're looking at having given up 42 points, and it's at least 42 points surrendered to close halves and open halves.
Actually, I can make it worse, JB. Notre Dame needed those minutes at the end of that Miami game. So Miami's scoring, if they would have scored faster, they would have had more of the middle eight, but Notre Dame would have had more time. And also, I will point out, Notre Dame got very lucky not to give up points in a big way, with the worst way of giving up points at the end of the first half of A&M. Fumbling a clap, that's not the biggest problem. That's not even the biggest problem. Playing a defense where there wasn't a second-level defender within 23 yards of the line of scrimmage, and they ran into field goal range because of that. That absolutely should have tacked on points. And I know it only would have been 3, but it would have been the ugliest 3 you could find because it would have been strictly on Chris Ash, other than, of course, CJ Carr.
Now that is absolutely on Chris Ash, no doubt about it.
Yeah. We have to talk about the fantastic offense played by Notre Dame against Purdue. Also, guys, would be remiss if we didn't go back to that. But I did want to throw in one funny thing here because I've been waiting to use it. Irish Gambler asked a question. He goes, and we get to talk about the offense and the defense here. Can we go back to summer camp for a moment and everything reported? How did this defense dominate? I cannot wrap my mind around it, other than was every summer pass thrown at Leonard Moore. I just thought that had to make a podcast at some point. Because, yeah, and today Eric Hansen asked, use the word barrage, which I thought was a great word. Have you learned anything from looking at camp to think this defense was that much more dominant over your offense? And now Tim Priester, the offense looks like it is not only clicking, but is about to take off.
You know, with a little bit of coaching background, my first thought to that is, okay, well, you took a beating and you learned your lessons and you got better and benefited from the beating that you were taking from the defense. I don't think any of us, I know a lot of fans think this, but I don't think any of us believe that was a smoke screen being put out by Notre Dame.
Well, it's not a very valuable smoke screen to say our defense is killing our offense. It doesn't do you any good.
We were talking about the comments that Mike Denbrock made coming into. Right. They're not going to make something up like that. I mean, I imagine they could, but that's way too. They're in the middle of camp, man. They're just focused on what they're doing, and they're not playing mind games with the media, so that the media plays mind games with the press. The defense did better than the offense in the preseason, and maybe the offense really benefited from that. I really like CJ Carr's growing up before our eyes, and he's doing it extremely quickly. And that was something that you guys can go ahead and jump in here. That's something that Pete Sampson asked about that. And Marcus Freeman elaborated upon the balance of their offense and the knowledge that if you can run it a little bit, that's going to open things up downfield. And CJ Carr, through 3 games after, I thought it was really interesting to see Marcus Freeman, like, they're telling him information from the sideline. He's putting his arm up like, I got it. And I think he was referencing the 48-yarder to Jordan Faison.
Yeah, I just think that CJ Carr, and again, this is probably where we didn't do a good enough job as media looking at the big picture of things, that CJ Carr had some camp struggles, as we know. And again, Marcus Freeman, almost unsolicited today, talked about how good the defense looked in preseason camp. But we didn't do a good enough job, in my opinion, as reporters of accentuating that CJ Carr won the starting job because of what he did for 8 months, 8 long months, not just because of what happened in preseason camp. And I think what we're seeing now is what he did over those 8 months, now coupled with 3 games of experience. He's compounding his growth in an accelerated manner that is pretty special. And it's easy to see why Marcus Freeman has placed elite adjectives on CJ Carr. Like, he is playing at a level that is far beyond, I think, what would have been even a reasonable expectation. Like, you can sit here and talk about all the disappointment in Notre Dame starting 1-2. You cannot sit here and say Notre Dame is 1-2 because of CJ Carr. Notre Dame very well might be 0-3 if not for CJ Carr. And it's hard to think Notre Dame would have had a chance, as good a chance as it did, to win its first 2 games without CJ Carr. So I think he's elite. I think he is a future pro, but I think now this is one of those missing ingredients I've harped upon that gives Notre Dame a chance to be a playoff factor for the next number of years. And if they can add a true difference maker, an absolute beast on their defensive interior sometime in that, I think that's the most glaring missing ingredient on the roster now.
You know, we talked about it after he won the job, we talked about on podcasts and this analysis that, I think CJ Carr panicked a little bit during preseason because he's never experienced camp pressure. He's never experienced a competition in camp. He's always been the quarterback since he first threw a football. But then once he won the job and you start talking to him and the confidence is back. Okay, I've got the job. I don't have to worry about any of that nonsense. I just need to stick to, what's ahead of me. And his, like you say, JB, I mean, his progress, and it helps play at Purdue. Let's be realistic. That was not a defense that was going to stop Notre Dame, but Notre Dame cranked it up to a different level, and a lot of it, the offensive line played fantastic, took advantage of an average defensive line and then beat them up, took it to another level. Running backs were sensational. Wide receivers blocking downfield. everything about the offense clicked on Saturday. But CJ Carr, once he was named the starter, that took him to a different space in his head and a different level of confidence. It was time.
He's been very good. I mean, Love and Price and Carr is a heck of a backfield to put back there. Malachi Fields and Jordan Faison have been excellent as well. 5-game season coming up, though. Purdue is not part of the 5-game season. We want to see if we're still talking about CJ Carr continually growing and how good he is and how they're this record because of him after NC State, after USC. How about when
after Arkansas,
USC comes after Arkansas? I know, after Arkansas comes. So it's going to get a little harder, but it was not hard on Saturday. Here's the breakdown of the drives. I showed Tim Priester at one point my drive chart.
Looking clean.
On the left side is touchdowns. Then there's 3 and out. Then there's empty drives. Then there's like field goal drives. Left side, touchdown, 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 touchdown. Darian Price interrupts it with a 100-yard kickoff return touchdown. Then, of course, the one-play fumble. Second half, touchdown, touchdown, touchdown. And then we get into the subs coming in. So it's about as good as it gets. You made a great point that we had a lot of questions about why was the offensive line so much better. I'm not sure if I included one or not, but if we go ahead and preface it. The defensive line wasn't as good playing against them, too. Price and Love are great. Notre Dame's offensive line always gets better as the season progresses. It did in 2021. It did in 2020. They also were playing Purdue and not Miami's absolute attacking front four. All right? As JB just said, you see those guys attack, go watch the Purdue game and try to tell me they were facing the same thing with the offensive line.
Did you see Miami Saturday night? We had, because of the earlier game, even with the delay, we had a chance to see that. That's a better football team than I anticipated. That's
I agree.
A really good football team.
And I think, quite frankly, as we bounce around a little bit, I think the ACC is worse than I thought by a long shot.
Miami should win that league.
So they need Miami to continue. We'll still see. I think the jury's still out on Florida State. They handled Alabama, and Alabama nearly caused. Well, Alabama helped contribute to the Wisconsin AD having to come out and voice his dreaded support for Luke Fickell. So that's not a bad Alabama team. I just think that Miami has emerged as the clear class of the ACC. Now they have to, handle that because they haven't always done that in recent years. They have not handled prosperity. They seem more mature and doing a better job. And frankly, Notre Dame fans should want Miami to run the table at this point because if Notre Dame is going to claw and scratch its way back into the picture by stacking a bunch of wins together, it needs Miami and frankly needs Texas A&M to keep doing big things.
You need Miami in the playoff, and you need Texas A&M to threaten for the playoff. So they keep saying, "Look who Notre Dame lost to." When Notre Dame goes to 10-2, if Notre Dame goes to 10-2, you say, "Well, I mean, A&M only lost one game in mid-November, or A&M only lost into October, then they barely lost by 1 point at home to Texas, or something like that." That's what you need. But you know what's weird, JB, is if Miami runs the table, they're going to be number one. They'll be number one. Yeah. Ohio State's probably not running the table. Miami will be number one.
Yeah,
That's right. Crazy.
By the way, it was the last line of tail of the tape. I've officially declared talk of Notre Dame running the table as rat poison, and I don't want anything to do with it.
If they do, though, Tim, if they do run the table, I'm just saying if they run the table, Tim Priester, if they do, then it's good for podcasts. So there
Absolutely.
You go. Got to keep saying it.
I would point out right here now, then, if that's intel of the tape, that at least I personally have never seen Nick Saban, Lane Kiffin, and Tim Priester at the same time. So
I saw Priester and Kiffin on a tarmac together once. Actually, it was an interesting thing that you saw there. Yeah, there was. With that, we will. Just wandering around. One of you is fired. The other one is just wandering around. We will be back with segment 2, burning up the boards. Segment 2, Burning Up the Boards, is brought to you by the RV Manufactured Housing Hall of Fame in Elkhart, Indiana. In addition to the museum and various exhibition halls, the campus is open to the public for free camping and is less than an hour from Notre Dame's campus. No reservation is required. Whether you're looking to learn more about the history of recreational vehicles in the Kindle Library or simply for a cost-effective, interesting place to stay on their family road trip, the RV Manufactured Housing Hall of Fame can provide exactly what you're looking for. Our first question comes from Gabe Jacobs and a little bit from Irish Bogey, but they're both about Will Pauling and Jaden Greathouse. How does Denbrock get Greathouse and Pauling the ball to get them going a little bit this season? I'm not sure if they're not getting open or if Carr isn't looking toward them, but it feels like an offense that didn't have much. It feels like the offense doesn't have much to waste. They've been a bit of a disappointment so far. Let's take that part first, guys.
Well, if it means less throws to Fields and Faison, I don't want them to get football. I don't like the comment was made. Jason Garrett said something about dynamic with Will Pauling. I don't think he's a dynamic receiver. I think he's a chains mover, and so that's really important. But I don't want it to come at the expense of Faison, Fields, and Raritan, who, by the way, wasn't even targeted. Am I correct on that? He wasn't even targeted over the weekend. But, you know, I mean, generally speaking, certainly Pauling's an underneath receiver. We think of Greathouse as a little bit more downfield because we have the image of that Penn State game in our heads, but he's a slot receiver. I'm not worried about it as long as you're getting the football in the hands of guys that can make plays. Faison's performance against Purdue, I mean, when you talk about explosive weapons for Notre Dame's offense, he was right there with Love and Price on Saturday. He's healthy, he's stronger, he's explosive, his cuts are outstanding. More worried about those guys continue getting the football.
Look, Notre Dame is in an envious position around college football when it comes to skill position players with the ability to impact games. And there's only so many plays and only so many footballs to go around, so to speak. And CJ Carr threw 12 passes Saturday and amassed 223 yards. But let's not ignore the fact that this offense has scored 106 points in 3 games. The overall team total is more than that because of a couple of special team scores. But 106 points, I believe, by the offense in 3 games. You can complain about a lot for sure. You should not be complaining about the offense and distribution. Those guys, I think Will Pauling has emerged. He's a safety valve, and I think CJ Carr has picked up on that. We've seen it in a couple of different key situations that there is a trust there, that he can find him when they absolutely have to move the sticks. But I think we've heard and now we've seen evidence CJ Carr in the throw game wants to push it downfield, and if his option is to try and find Faison or Fields on a deep throw or to come back to Will Pauling or even Greathouse, then I think he's going to give those guys those burners and the big framed Fields a chance to make a play further downfield before having to come back to those. There was one play Saturday night I noticed pretty glaringly that I thought he threw a sideline out, and if he'd waited a half second longer, Greathouse was breaking open across the middle and what might have been a 30-plus yard gain, if not a touchdown, depending on the angle that the Purdue defensive backs would have taken at that point in time. But I don't think look, you can nitpick. We could do a podcast every day this week nitpicking the defense. I'm not sure we're there yet on nitpicking the offense with what it's done with a first-time starting quarterback and guys in Pauling and Fields that until this year had played a boatload of football but never in a Notre Dame uniform.
And Irish Bogey on top of this one wondered if Carr is staying away from the middle of the field, why that's hurting Greathouse and Pauling. He's not actually staying away from the middle of the field because the most passes he has thrown 18 passes short middle, a combined 12 right and left. He's thrown 3 middle. I like to say middle. 3 to the left, 8 to the right. So he likes that throw to Malachi Fields. And he's thrown just as many straight down the middle of the field as he has deep left or right. And he is in his 3rd game as a starting quarterback. So to not show a tendency there yet, that's pretty impressive because we all know there was one tendency that he's already eradicated. Mike Denbrock has from game number 1. They go this way now, guys. I'm pointing straight. They go down that way on your screen. They go that as opposed to the bottom or top of your screen.
I think there will be a time, too, when there are 4 wideouts on the field and there's a lot more attention being paid to other people than Jaden Greathouse.
Yeah.
And that will be an opportunity for him to make a big play.
And also, really quickly on Eli Raritan, he blocked for like 400 rushing yards. So I think he did a good job. He was totally fine. Yeah.
Absolutely. I thoroughly covered that in tail of the tape and just kept yelling out loud as I was watching. It's like, oh my God, he was really, really good.
Yeah, I thought that was Raritan's most physical game today. Yeah. And they used him on some center line stuff when they needed to push the pile and pick up some short yardage plays. That was different too. We had seen some of that in preseason camp with both Raritan and Washington. Washington, side note, got his most extensive action to date. But I thought that was Raritan especially on a day he didn't get the ball, he still very much impacted the game.
I think Ty Washington's about to get his most extensive action to date coming up next week
He
as well.
blocked well.
If he has any say in it and his performance to get an audition, it might happen in Donald J. Reynolds Razorback Stadium, or whatever you want to call it these days. Very quickly, guys, this question from ND Dan 106. I like it because he gets a pass from a lot of us because I think he deserves one. If the pass defense is indeed the issue, and Mike Mickens is the defensive pass game coordinator, why is no one asking a question about his role?
Go ahead, JB.
I mean, it's a fine question to ask, but we have answers on this one too. So he is the defensive passing game coordinator.
He is. This is not the first year he's been the defensive passing coordinator. So I would say that's why when you assess that and say one of these things is not like the other, well, that one of those things is Chris Ash, whatever you think. Whether we've never heard Marcus Freeman talk as much about the technique in the secondary as what he has in the opening 21 days of this season or whatever.
Yeah.
So you want to say, why isn't Mickens? And that's fair to ask. Why isn't that?
It's a great question to ask, but yeah.
And maybe that's something we explore with the Thursday Zoom with Marcus Freeman. I've got I hardly ever write questions down in advance because I don't want to pigeonhole myself into tunnel vision, but I've actually made notes for Thursday Zoom of things that I may want to try and ask Marcus Freeman about on Thursday. And that's worth being in the notebook to see if that's something to ask about. But I think the very short and not even being a jerk answer is, well, it's not being asked right now because we know what it's been with Mike Mickens as pass game coordinator. We know what it's been with Mike Mickens developing All-Americans on top of All-Americans, freshmen and otherwise. And we know what it's been with Mike Mickens evaluating the right players for this program to help turn them into All-Americans and future NFL players.
I think you answer it pretty simply by asking yourself, has Mike Mickens got worse, or has there been a component introduced into the equation that's different? I mean, why in the world would Mike Mickens be doing something wrong, or suddenly be a bad secondary coach? He also had, he had Golden Zachary playing integral roles last week, but I don't have any reason to second guess Mike Mickens.
And as you get pointed out, it's not his first year, JB. Last year, they had the number one ranked pass defense in the country, and the year before, it was only ranked number one in the country also. So that might be why we are not questioning Mike Mickens when you go number one and number one back to back. That's pretty good. Next question from N. Jacobs 3. If CJ Carr is arguably a top 5 QB in college football, he says, I have seen this from a few national people now. How good is Minchie to have a competition? And what happened at fall camp to make it so close? And I actually like this question from Jay Jude because I have an outlier answer. After what we've seen from CJ Carr these last 2 games, what the heck was going on with the number one game plan?
Well, that Minchie played well. He did a lot of what he must have done in preseason that we weren't privy to. But I think it goes back to Carr just not playing up to his capabilities at times in preseason practice. As far as what was Denbrock thinking, what was the head coach thinking as far as putting his first-time starter out there quarterback? We don't know exactly what the decree was from the head coach. We found out today that if Marcus Freeman wants something on defense, he'll tell his defensive coordinator, I want that. So I don't know exactly what the decree was for Marcus Freeman going into the game. Maybe it's on Denbrock. They probably they were too conservative with
They were too conservative.
They were too conservative
Yes.
with them. Absolutely. But you can also understand that if you're a coordinator and you throw a guy out there and he makes a couple critical mistakes and now you're chasing double digits, then you're going to get ripped for being too aggressive with a kid that's never started a game before either. But certainly when you see what he's been able to do in the last 2 games, it's a natural question to ask.
I'm actually very glad that this question was asked, and I think it's a really good one. And what I would say is, without even obviously having known this question was going to be on here, and I've already acknowledged that I didn't do a good job of prepping in advance for today's question, so I'll apologize again. I will say, though, I had someone on campus tell me last week that Kenny Minchie from January through today, or today being this day last week, was the single most improved player in the entire football program. And this person, it caught me off guard. I was like, really? And I did a double take for that person to tell me that Kenny Minchie And that's not to diminish, because we saw Kenny look good in the times we saw preseason camp, and we saw him not look bad for the most part in spring. But for this person to unprompted talk about Kenny Minchey being the most improved person in the program, I thought spoke volumes about where Kenny Minchey has developed, how hard he's attacked it, how much he's grown his game. And he's going to make a lot of money as somebody else's starting quarterback next year.
Here's what I think happened, guys. Mike Denbrock went in with a plan to get CJ Carr going, throwing horizontally. And then when he reevaluated some things, he goes, you know what we can't do is block Miami. So that's why the plan didn't change to get CJ Carr dropping back in the pocket forever. I think he found out they couldn't block Miami as the game progressed. Yep. What are you going to do when you realize you can't block Miami? All right, let's get Carr back there and not worry about his blind side so much and just see if everything goes out okay for him. I honestly think it was a fine opening game plan to get CJ Carr going with some easy access throws. Then all of a sudden, he's like, what are you going to do? Just going to go ahead and we're going to block Bain. Hey, Knapp, just take care of Bain because I got to get this ball pushed downfield, okay? So you make sure you do your job over there. I mean, maybe his discretion might have been the better part of valor there. People don't want to admit it sometimes. Miami was better up front than Notre Dame was up front. There were no holes either.
Yeah, I'd like to see the matchup today, but you don't have that luxury. It was what it was is the best way to put it. They were better. Their defense, again, saw them play Saturday night. Or
I'd take mid-January, not today, Tim.
Yeah, no, they're good. They're legit, no doubt about it. We have a question from N.E. Davis 2. Is experienced talent, or lack thereof, in any way, shape, or form related to the regression of the defense, or is that just crazy talk?
I like the last part of it. I mean, I think it's part of it. I just don't think it's the top part of it. Like it's clearly they're not as talented on the back end in the game against Purdue as they would have been if they had Xavier Watts and Leonard Moore and Adon Schuler. They just weren't out there when all those things happened. All three of those guys were not. You should still stop Purdue from getting 14 chunk gains and a half, for God's sakes. But none of those guys were out there, and they're better players. We don't need to toot our horn about Xavier Watts ever again. It's been proven. I just can't believe how much better he was than I didn't know.
And I think now, based on depth chart changes, we're seeing this coaching staff bet on talent and upside and long-term development with some short-term growing pains when you are adding a Tate Johnson to the top of the depth chart opposite Adon Schuler. And that doesn't mean they won't need Stroman. I thought Stroman, I love the physicality that he brings. I think that they will need Stroman to win some games this year. But once again, if guys are pretty close to even, and one dude can be in your program for another 3 or 4 years, and another guy's going to be in your program for another 3 months, you play the guy that you can have longer. And I think it's a fair question. I think there's the talent, but it is inexperienced and getting experience. And I said in an instant analysis how much better they will be for what Dallas Golden and Mark Zachary and Tay Johnson and Madden Faramo and others experienced this past Saturday.
You guys are both looking at that question from the perspective of the back end of the defense. I looked at it from the front end of the defense, and it's part of something I wrote about in today's Tell the Tape. Because as I watched Notre Dame's defensive ends against Purdue, okay, now Purdue gave up 5 sacks and 10 tackles for loss against USC. And, look, if they threw a flag every time Joey Tonona held, that game would still be playing. Notre Dame's, we looked at this, and you look at the depth, and we expect Bryce Young to take the next step. And I think he's still kind of growing into his body because he's moving more like a tackle than an end now. And so maybe 260 for him is better than 271. I don't know. But when I look at Notre Dame's, defensive ends, who are the explosive players? I mean, you have Traore, who I think is going to be very good. And I think, Logan Thomas looks like an explosive player. But let's be realistic about their ends. Tui Alamaka and Burnham and Botello, and Young right now, the way he's playing, it's not there is no Julian Okwara on this roster, and that guy could get to the quarterback anytime he wanted to. So, I mean, I think there is something to a regression as it relates to the defensive ends. And, guys like Dunham and Uitade can't get here soon enough. I don't. Burgess looks more like a tackle to me, maybe a strong side defensive end, and I'm not sure what else. Hulak is kind of a tweener. I don't know how he's going to develop or where he's going to develop. They're just not that explosive at a position where you need to get to the quarterback.
The problem is we thought they were going to be explosive at the defensive end position. We thought the six defensive ends were going to be excellent.
And I think if Bryce Young had picked up where he left off, you could run him and Traore out there and think, okay, they can get pressure on the quarterback at any time. It's just not happening yet.
Our next question is from Bryce's burner. It's actually not John Bryce, but Bryce's burner phone. A two-part question. I believe T.O. brought up the lack of run stuffs versus ND's offense in the post-game podcast and its dramatic improvement. Do you guys think that was scheme change, technique, or bettering technique, or just the opposing personnel? There's a second part of that. I do lean towards personnel, but guys, I want to say, we said it before the Miami game, just didn't think it'd be that bad. The offensive line usually gets better as the season progresses. It's a unit that absolutely has to coalesce. It doesn't just usually show up and dominate.
Yeah, I think that it was a combination of things being simplified. We heard Marcus Freeman say that today, that because they knew Purdue could do some exotic stuff, and Barry Odom has been a good defensive coordinator who's been able to do less with more in his years, particularly at Arkansas and Missouri. I think because of that, Marcus Freeman said they simplified things. And so I think guys felt more confident about just firing off the ball and pushing their opposition downfield. I do think that they're growing and improving together. And we've made the point before, because the battle at right guard went so long, technically into the first game of the season, because each played a half, this offensive line has not had much cohesion to it. Now it's finally played 2 full games, more or less, with the same 5, but it has not had that. So I think it's a combination of all those elements, TP.
I agree. I mean, A&M's going to score a lot of points this year. They're going to give up a lot of points, too. There's no doubt. And Purdue, oh boy, when they play IU, Cignetti's going to put 100 on them. He'll try.
He almost did last year. He almost did last year, didn't he?
He might be able to do it. That performance against Illinois.
Yeah.
I thought Illinois could win that. I certainly thought it was going to be competitive, and they destroyed them. But, yeah, it's all those things. I mean, I think it's the last 2 opponents. This wouldn't have been a question. It wasn't a question after week 1 for good reason. But the O-line development, and then the culture of the offensive line. When Notre Dame offensive line gets beaten down, they bounce back. They pull together like Marcus Freeman was talking about today. And Purdue was a good team to pull together against and get it done. And Arkansas, Marcus Freeman is right. Arkansas they have a 387-pound defensive tackle who can't move and couldn't bring down was that a backup? Who was that?
That was like the Wildcat quarterback.
That was a Wildcat quarterback. Couldn't bring that guy down. So there's some big dudes on that D line for Arkansas, but I like Notre Dame's chances there, and that is one of the worst tackling angle secondaries I think you're going to see in the country this year in Arkansas.
Instead of adding Al Golden to this question as originally asked, I'm just going to ask you guys what you think the bigger problems are. Irish Esquire wants to know in which of these areas is Ash not doing as good of a job as Golden. So instead of us saying all of them, where do you think the greatest detriment is at this point through 3 games watching Chris Ash coordinate a defense? Teaching. Yes or no? High yes, high no.
Is it what? The question is yes.
Would you say teaching is an issue at this point when you watch Notre Dame's defense?
Yes.
Usage of talent. I don't think that's necessarily an issue.
Yeah, I don't think
that's necessarily.
I'm not sure who comes to mind there.
Oh, well, the final play against A&M comes to mind, but I never thought of it until, why are you not putting in Jaden Osbury for Drake Bowen in that situation?
Yep.
And I think KVA has moved into his role of playing more, so I'm going to give a pass on that.
He was not in a good mood this week. He wasn't at interviews, and he absolutely was salty during that game. he had more verbal battles than any of the Notre Dame defensive players with the opposition.
We need it. You need verbal battles out of Notre Dame's defensive players
I
right now
agree.
because they need to do something. The art of calling the right play at the right time.
Jump in there, JB.
I mean, I still think number one has to be teaching because we're hearing Marcus Freeman today,
Yeah.
September 22nd, say that it's technique issues, it's execution issues, it's not playing with clarity, it's not playing with velocity. So forget our opinions and listen to the boss. And the boss is telling you what the answer is, and something is either not being taught on the practice field or not being translated from the practice field to game day. The talent, look, I think the fact we saw Madden Faremo play almost 25 plays on Saturday, that we see Tay Johnson move top the depth chart, that we're seeing more KVA, that we're speaking to Jaden Osbury this week, I think tells you what they think about him. I think they are letting the talent emerge. We just discussed it, especially when it's the talent that's going to be here for multiple years. I think that's the right call. If you feel like you can absorb their growing pains and get them that experience now, it's only going to make your program more complete moving forward. So for me, I'm not on the headset. I'm not seeing what they're seeing. I think we would all like to see them, quote unquote, call more aggressively. So that would probably be number two for me.
There was a graphic, Tim. You saw it on the NBC broadcast, and this was something that there was a lot of speculation about. Oh, they're running too much zone. They're not running enough man. The percentages that they provided were essentially the same as it related to that, but the big difference was third down blitzes, where Golden brought third down blitzes 47% of the time. Ash is doing it 30% of the time. And I'm not necessarily saying that that's wrong, because if you're not getting home, then you're really hanging out the back end of the defense to dry. But that's an area right there that they're, some of the burden's on Al Washington too. They've got to get to the quarterback better than they have up to this point. But I think, at this stage, comparing to what they were doing under Al Golden, I'm not sure.
Right. I tried to remove that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like
Chris
Ash can't come out on top on any of these at this point. Why would
I want to give before you read this next question, Tim, I want to give Irish Esquire credit because he did have a very funny question written here, and I butchered it by removing Golden. So he listed things like this: teaching, using talent appropriately, the art of calling the right play at the right time, deception in disguise, cohesive theory of defense and identity, play blitz design, something else, all the above. If you say none of the above, I'm canceling my subscription.
This is where I say, is that a promise, Irish Esquire? No, I've already answered your question. But you get a further glimpse of my personality. Yeah, I'm a jerk.
We have a question from Baba Ganoush. Is Taylon Green is the quarterback for the Arkansas Razorbacks, who I've been talking about since the end of April, because I think he's really, really dangerous. Anyway, the question is Taylon Green the most dangerous quarterback that Notre Dame will face this season?
JB, you go first, because I just like to point out that Notre Dame's third string quarterback that transferred was about to be the most dangerous quarterback they faced, but he has to battle through injury at this point now.
Yeah, I'm not sure I still would have given it to Angeli, but kudos.
I'm just kidding. It wasn't Steve. He's not the most dangerous quarterback they're going to face, but he's good for Steve Angeli, what he did to before getting injured.
I don't know if Taylon Green is quite as dangerous as a Marcel Reed, simply because Marcel Reed had better weapons. Arkansas has some nice pieces, but the sum of the parts for that Aggies offense is better than what Taylon Green is operating with at Arkansas. And I'm not ready to preclude Jaden Mayava
that's my one
from
right
this
there.
conversation. So that's where I would be. He's top three, top four for sure. I think you can pool Carson Beck, Marcel Reed, Green, and Mayava together, and to me, it's those four, and then it's a precipitous drop off for everyone else that the Irish have faced or will face.
Yeah, Marcel Reed's a great athlete. He's a little athlete. Taylon Green's 9 inches taller than him.
Yeah. That sounds funny. Yeah,
so they're
little is
both-
the right word, but then
yeah.
you say it that way.
No, and they're both dangerous. And I'd like to say a few things about Taylor Green because I've been watching him for months and spent a lot of time last night watching him. And he's absolutely dangerous, man. He's got this beautiful long stride. He's more inclined to want to run around the edge than go straight up the middle. And he's hard to contain when he decides to do that. His read option decision making is really, really good. His ball fakes in the read option are really, really good. And JB, the weapons that Reed has in Craver and Concepcion, I really like Omega Blake. He's number 9. He's a good player. But I think Craver's going to be playing football for a long time. Concepcion has that type of athleticism too. But Taylor Green's dangerous. He's for a guy that's so long, he's kind of a short arm thrower. And he'll throw it to the other team too. Maybe not quite as readily as Ryan Brown has in his career, but he'll throw it away too. You want to stay in your pass lanes. You don't want him to get on the edge because when he gets on the edge, like 4 strides, he's 12 yards downfield. So he's really dangerous. But all the guys that you mentioned are definitely dangerous too. And Marcel Reed, great deal of respect for him and what their offensive coordinator's done with him, Colin Klein. So there's a few on this list, but Taylor Green's next, and he's a handful.
Maeva, 9 touchdowns, 0 picks so far this year. For those that don't know, Steve Angeli did rupture his Achilles, is out for the season. That is game number 4. I know he's already redshirted, but you could probably look for a medical redshirt these days because it's game number 4. He was at 10 touchdowns and 2 picks, guys. And then this guy's stats are a little swayed by the defensive secondary he's been facing. Just kidding. Marcel Reed, 9 touchdowns, 1 pick.
Well,
he had an easy go of it. So.
I blame their strength and conditioning coach for his torn Achilles. Plain and simple.
Ouch. That's bad. 2 more questions. This one I threw in because it was brought up today. A question for Marcus Freeman. Chris Schreiber asks, Gray played boundary in Moore's absence while moving Zachary to field. Do you see it possible that Moore moves to field when he returns, which minimizes the amount Gray has to cover in space? The actual question was, can Moore just go cover the best player?
And Marcus Freeman said...
It was asked today, yes.
Yeah, and Marcus Freeman said he can do that, and we're working to potentially implement that. We can't play man 100% of the time, but yes, he is getting to that point. We got to get him healthy. He's questionable this week. I think they're encouraged right now. As long as there's no setbacks, he'll have a chance to go on Saturday. But yes, Marcus Freeman officially said Leonard Moore is that dude. He can be their lockdown guy to cover any other team's best player.
And Tim, I think if people are wondering, you have to disguise man and zone. Obviously, if Leonard Moore is covering, say, Jeremiah Smith, and he keeps bouncing back and forth, you have to be able to play zone out of that too. You can't just show that Leonard Moore is now covering Smith, and there's going to be man-to-man.
You should be able to do that.
Yeah, and that's a great question. People have been asking the question since Jeremiah Smith was pitted with Christian Gray. All I remember last year was that Leonard Moore's a different player now in terms of experience and training, but he did mention the one time he played field against Louisville, he said, I just felt like a fish out of water. But of course, he has repped hundreds more times at both boundary and field sets.
I bet he's a pretty quick study.
I bet he can probably figure it out, yes. Our final question, best name of the day, from Rootin' Tootin' Recruitin'. Arkansas is a bigger mess than Notre Dame. I think that's not only Notre Dame's a mess, but the defensive coordinator is an issue. They want to replace their head coach, not some defensive coordinator hired from the Rutgers scrap heap before the pandemic, but I digress. My question to you all, if Notre Dame loses to this collection of slack-jawed yokels, his words, not mine, what does it say about the direction of the program? Would that necessitate a coordinator change? And he adds, even if it's a garden variety loss. Let's not say crazy things like if they lose 48-47, because then everything is on the table. But if you lose a football game 24-23 and you're 1-3 and you've seen 24 is still too much, right, to give up. But I'm saying 27-24 again, and you're 1-3.
It might be 24. Might be a pretty. First of all, you see the over/under, TL?
I know. So 65. I'm not saying it's going 24-23. I'm just thinking if they lose 48-47, all questions are on the table. That's why.
Yeah. No. Of course. Of course. If they hold them to 24 points, that's pretty good. If you lose, nobody cares about that. But I'm still taking the over because I think, I first of all, I think Arkansas's defense is worse than Notre Dame's.
I do too. I also agree that with the theme of the question that 1-3 is worse than 0-2.
Yeah, because you feel like you just got back on the horse and now you get knocked off. Tough environment, but you always want to play the team whose coach is. I mean, there's a threat of him being fired. I'm also hearing talk about him just flat out retiring at the end of the season. JB, I don't know if you're hearing some of that too. That wouldn't be surprising, guys. Sam Pittman's been in the business for a long time. I think it's a really good time to play Arkansas. You don't like a team, the wounded animal coming off of a loss, but that is a devastating loss. They should have won that game on the road.
For people that don't know, they were down 1 in field goal range, and by in field goal range, we mean inside the 10-yard line. They're in PAT range, and they fumbled.
Yeah. So,
sorry, go ahead.
No, that's all I got, JB. I mean, yeah, Arkansas is a mess. Notre Dame's not a mess. They certainly would be if they can't hold it. Look, I don't think this comes easily, but I think Notre Dame's a better football team, and I do think they have the better. I think they do have the better defense of the two teams, and I think Arkansas is going to have a much more difficult time stopping Notre Dame's offense and vice versa.
So we heard Marcus Freeman again talk today about the culture of this program, and now is the time to point fingers at oneself rather than coaches or teammates. He praised the selflessness of the wide receivers blocking. He again praised the selflessness of Jadarian Price. Well, this game Saturday is going to be a culture game, and the culture's not great at Arkansas right now. And Notre Dame believes it has great culture, and Marcus Freeman has said it has great culture. So we'll find that out on Saturday. To the question, things are super bad. Like I alluded to this. I've heard directly from people at Arkansas. What are you hearing about us? They're nervous. They're very concerned about when the hangman's noose is going to descend. It didn't make sense for it to right now. I had even a conference commissioner from a power conference, a deputy commissioner, reach out to me last week and say, why the hell did Virginia Tech and UCLA fire those guys before the 4th game of the season? The entire roster could go into the portal. And that's true. And redshirt and go play somewhere else next year or decide what they want to do. So I think that's why we didn't see any additional firings this weekend. We're not done. It's going to be an incredibly active cycle, incredibly active. I expect Arkansas to be on that list of programs that are cycled, and it's bad. And, Bobby Petrino's the offensive coordinator, and I've had people directly in that program tell me that was not Sam Pittman's hire to make, that people told Sam Pittman, here's who you're hiring. This is already done. You better like it. And now Brandon Marcello, who does a great job, has reported today that Bobby Petrino is already working the phones to say that he would be happy to serve as interim coach if need be. So
I was about to say, I just got a text today saying, finger pointing are us. Bobby Petrino is angling for his job just like he did to Auburn in the past.
And he has been. Like, to be clear, he's had his eyes on returning to the scene of the motorcycle crash as the top cyclist for a long time. So dysfunction is there in addition to defensive dereliction. So again, Notre Dame believes in its culture. It better show it this Saturday.
Yeah. So in other words, that would be very bad. Would say a lot of bad things for the program if you go loose to that culture in this situation, Tim Priester. That was the actual question, and we don't want to answer that until Saturday. It's 3:00. You don't have to deal with a loss or a win until the game actually happens and you predict the score prior to and find out if you're right. Be a bad loss.
It would be, but you can't. You better have it together. I think Notre Dame will have it together.
I do too. 3-0. It's not as terrible of a loss than 1-2. I mean, it's most obvious statement of the year. But like when you had to predict the silliness of predicting a season, and you're like, they're going to lose a game. You took Arkansas, but you weren't taking Arkansas because they were 1-2 going into Arkansas either. There's no way.
But I didn't anticipate. Well, first of all, I didn't anticipate all of it. Although we knew. I mean, them having to go their last 2 games, and then having to go to Memphis. So that was not a good situation before having to play Notre Dame. Yeah. Now they're back home, but now they're demoralized with Notre Dame coming to town. I'm really looking forward to. At this stage of my career, there aren't too many stadiums I haven't been in, and this is one that I haven't. So, really looking forward to that.
We'll be back Thursday. What is Thursday? That's the 25th. I don't have my dates right. This is the first day of fall. We'll be back Thursday, September 25th, with another Irish Illustrated Insider podcast. Before that, we will talk to offensive coordinator Mike Denbrock on Tuesday, a few Irish players, and of course, Marcus Freeman Thursday at noon. Until then, for Tim Priester of Irish Illustrated, John Bryce of Football Scoop, Jack Freeman of Irish Illustrated, our producer, I'm Tim O'Malley. Thank you for watching and listening. Irish Illustrated Insider.